Welcome to the Community ROI podcast. Here, senior community experts, founders, and C-level managers tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about how community impacts business growth. By listening to these conversations, you'll get actionable steps on how to connect community goals with business goals to skyrocket business growth while still bringing extreme value to community members. My name is Yuri. I help people and brands shine through communities and personal connections. And my guest is Cat Nilsson, a community and growth strategist with background in GTM, spanning sales, marketing, PR, customer success, you name it, who currently leads CMX, the global home for community professionals, and brings to fruition all the amazing things like CMX Slack Space, CMX Summit, Loop, Community Industry Awards, and of course, something that I read for 6 years already, CMX Community Industry Report. So, welcome, Kat.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here today and talk about all things CMX and the Community Industry Report.
I will ask you everything. There is so much data. For me, it's always like the best place to go and check what exactly happened in the community industry. And I know there are some other reports, but CMX for me is like always the main. So I'm always waiting. And every time that you or like there were folks before you who were sending this report out there, I'm like, of course, I'm down. I will spend it's not that easy to fill it up. It's like 15, 20 minutes, but like whatever. I want to invest this time because I truly believe in
Yeah.
what's going on and we need to do this. So thank you so much for preparing it. And I have this personal question. So you've been a year in Bevy. And for the last
Yes.
9 months, as you were working with all the things connected with CMX. So,
hmm
how does it personally feel to run the largest international community for community professionals in the world?
Yeah, that's an absolutely great question, Yuri. It feels incredible. I have to say that CMX has completely changed my life. Obviously, like you said, I have a background that's kind of spanning all things in go to market. I've done a little bit of everything, which has kind of turned me into a Swiss Army knife. Honestly, I can kind of slot into a lot of different places. I'm pretty adaptable. So when the opportunity came up to move into community, I was at first apprehensive because, again, I haven't done community work specifically, but I think that's kind of everyone's story in community, right? I think we all kind of just fall into it. We all come from different backgrounds. And I think a common through line throughout my entire career has really been focused on relationship building and connection. That's why I've always been in a client facing role. And so taking this on, I feel extremely honored and grateful, first of all. I know how important this community is to community professionals. And yeah, there's been so many incredible leaders before me with Beth and David Spinks. And so it is such an honor to be able to, yeah, be leading it. And again, like when I first took over, it was, full sprint to planning CMX Summit and these really, really large scale events. And again, even with the community industry report, right? I think everyone kind of looks to CMX as that North Star in the community industry. And so I take this extremely seriously and really want to ensure that we are continuing to help and support community professionals and ensure that they're thriving in their career. And I think I feel a very strong connection to the mission the more that I get into the work and the more that I continue to lead this community. And yeah, it's just been absolutely amazing.
You also told me that preparing this report was very personal for you, and you spent a lot of time specifically focusing to ensure that everything is like as it has to be, that everything is connected, data and story. So I'm curious, like, what motivated you? Like, what is number one question that you tried to answer with this report yourself?
Oh, wow. That's a really great question again. Yeah, I think that there's obviously a lot of hardships that have faced this industry. There's been a lot of changes that have happened throughout the years for good and, for the bad, right? But I think at the end of the day, this profession is so important. Um, and what I really wanted to do with this report was to show that even though there are so many challenges, the belief and the mission, kind of like what I feel for CMX, I think a lot of community professionals feel for their own communities. And at the end of the day, right, everyone is working for a company. So it is important to ensure that you are connecting everything that you're doing to those business outcomes. But I think the reason why we get into this work and why so many community professionals in the report are saying that they want to stay in the profession is because they have that belief. And there's so many incredible things that can happen outside of just the data, right? You can help somebody meet their next best friend or their next boss, that could be a life-changing role, or their next collaborator or their next co-founder if they want to go into their own business. So there's so many important elements to the work that we do. And I really think that that's reflected in the report. And that's exactly what I wanted to showcase because I think there's a lot of optimism for the future of this profession.
It reminded me of Ted Lasso, belief in belief. So that's basically, I need to actually
I love
print it
that
out and
show.
put it, yeah, I need to print it out and put it behind me, to this big belief sign. But also, I saw that this year it took over 300 professional community experts to get the report and get this data. I'm curious, like, what findings surprised you the most when you was analyzing the data that you get from them?
I think there are a lot of surprising findings. I mean, one of them is that it's, well, it's not that surprising given that a vast majority of the folks that we surveyed are in the B2B SaaS industry. So I would be surprised if AI adoption had remained low, but it's near total saturation now. Over 90% of folks are actually using AI in their day to day work, which is crazy. And yes, I know when you're kind of doing that, like there were a lot of controversial opinions, I would say, around AI. Obviously, I think what we kind of get into is that the human work is still very powerful and is still obviously very relevant. And I even say this in kind of my opening, statement that we are the moat. AI can't take away that human to human connection and belonging and trust that we always try to foster. But I do think what we are seeing, and people are very excited. I think over 80% of people said that they're super excited about AI's impact, even though there are still those worries about, could I lose my job because of AI? Because leadership doesn't understand how important it is to still keep a human in the loop, right? But I think there's so many powerful ways that we can use AI to really ensure that we are remaining efficient. We're operationalizing, right? All of that admin work, all of that manual work, especially when it comes to data analysis. I even used it for the report for myself because it really helps to synthesize and condense down a large data set. And it saves you so much time so that you really can then focus on hosting those events in person, ensuring that you are connecting your members with each other and fostering that sense of belonging that I think is the most important piece of the work that we are doing today.
I see the positive side. I'm always on the positive side of like technology and stuff. And I see the positive that finally this one person teams that usually community
Yeah,
builder, like if we are not talking about like huge company who has like whole divisions of people inside, but like when you are a one person team, now you finally get some teammates. Oh yeah, those are AI agents. But anyway, they can help you to be faster. They can help you to
exactly.
analyze data. Of course, you still need to add your human touch because otherwise, no, it just sucks. Please don't ever post everything that I tell you to post. Don't do that. But still,
Very
once
true.
again, I feel like it's given us more time to actually be humans. Not to
Yep.
just dive into this data like deep hole, but actually to get some analysis and then just go and talk to people. That's exactly what community bureaus are doing. And also go
Yep.
and talk to a leadership because it's also was
Yes.
interesting, what I saw in the report that even though that AI adoption is such high,
Hmm.
community ROI confidence somehow dropped. So tell me
I
more about
know.
this.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild. I still don't fully understand it myself, but what I can say is that it did stay flat in terms of having your CRM connected to your community. I think that this is a PSA for all community leaders. If you do not have your community connected to your CRM, you're not going to be as effective or successful as a community leader as part of a business that's trying to meet certain business objectives. And so that remained relatively flat. It actually grew a little bit too, where people don't have it connected. So that was also quite interesting. But for the folks that do, they are just so much more successful in their role because they actually have the data to point to. But another thing on top of that too that we were kind of talking about earlier is the narrative and the storytelling aspect. That's something that a lot of community professionals still really struggle with. Even if you have this data, even if it is connected, I think with the adoption of AI, it can make it somewhat more confusing, perhaps. because it's like, what do I focus on? What data is most interesting? There's another part of the report that touches on activity metrics. That's still something that a lot of community professionals are over indexing on. And I think NPS, or kind of like these revenue driving signals, are still really low in terms of what we're prioritizing. And that's actually something that's really important that we should be weaving into our stories when we're going to leadership and saying, this is actually the impact that we're having in the community. And so, with that being said, I think it is interesting. I think the more that we do use AI to do this data analysis, it is great. But if we're not able to, again, like you were saying, add that human touch and really identify what's important for my company and what kind of story can I build in order to get that leadership buy in, which also is the most important factor for getting budget. That was why a lot of people's budget increased this year, is because they were able to get more leadership buy-in. And that's also stated in a lot of the quotes that we received from community professionals as well. So I think this is all interconnected. It's all really interesting and kind of weaves the story of, it's super important to not only have the data, but also understanding, yeah, how do you translate that into something that really makes sense for your business and what's actually going to move the needle.
No, I had like already dozens of conversations, and we always talk about data plus storytelling. So storytelling itself is not getting you far, because like, yeah, okay, you will tell stories, people will believe you, but then they want to something tangible, and data
Yep.
itself will not bring you anywhere, because like, okay, it was
Hmm.
like 500 participants, so what? Or like we
Yep.
had like 20,000 messages, who cares? So it's always like connecting to specific, first of all, as you've said, if it's not in your CRM, if you cannot identify who is in your community and who is not, it
Yep.
sucks already, because otherwise, like, yeah, how can you prove anything around community?
You
It's
have to
very,
ground
very
it in the
hard.
data. That's the first step. If you don't have that, like you said, leadership won't take you seriously if they're like, hey, like what numbers do you have to back this up? You need it for the proof. But obviously, I still think the qualitative side is so important. Like somebody said in the report, leadership will remember the story that you tell. They won't remember the exact stat or percentage, of like engagement lift or retention. Like, obviously, that's super important. But if you're able to put it into the language that matters to them, then they're going to be like, oh, I completely understand where you're coming from. This exactly aligns with what I want and what the business needs. So, yes, let's continue on and let's, give you more budget or whatever kind of ask that you're coming in with. I think
It,
that'll definitely make it much more powerful.
it's like, when it's like the saying that people will not remember what exactly you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. I feel like it's very, very, very similar
It's
thing. And
very, very similar. Yeah.
what is the difference, like, from what you've heard from community professionals, from what you've seen, like, during the CMX summit and hundreds of conversations with people? Like, what is the difference between those who know how to get this data and store it and to tell it to leadership, and those who don't know? Like, what is the recipe for success? Like, how do you tell a compelling story and connect it to the data?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Again, I think those people that really want to learn and to push themselves outside of their comfort zone, I think sometimes, honestly, I think sometimes in the community industry, you know, it's very status quo. It's kind of like this kumbaya mentality where everyone wants to kind of believe in the same things, right? And I think it's really important that, when you are like, obviously, I think the elements of what makes us community professionals is super important. But kind of like what I was discussing earlier, we've been doing a post summit webinar series, and Demario made a really great case as to why, people really need to have that business acumen and need to kind of like push themselves and build up that confidence in order to, feel really comfortable pushing back on leadership or having kind of more of an authoritative voice in terms of like, this is actually what community serves to do for the business. And I think that, yeah, like at Summit, we had so many different conversations that really pointed to, you just kind of have to do it. You just kind of have to take action. You need to have that belief in what you're doing. And you need to just come in and say, hey, like, this is what I'm seeing. And again, you need to kind of like build up that story like around you as to like, this is why community is important and this is why it's important for you specifically. I think also having those internal advocates and champions. I think the people that are doing the work the best are ensuring that they are having these relationships and talking with the different teams within the org, whether it's product or success or support. It's vital to have those relationships and to have those advocates so that you then are able to, not only do the work yourself, but you have other people that are able to talk about how important it is, even when you're not there. And it kind of just continues on that like network effect. Um, so yeah, I would say that that is kind of what I've been hearing and kind of again coincides with what we're seeing in the report.
Now we were talking once again about data plus story and talking and telling and sharing it with other teams and leadership. But what is the clearest evidence that you found that community actually contributes to business growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a great question. I think it really depends on the company, right? Because you really have to go back to the foundations to determine what actually again is like what we're doing here, like what does leadership like actually really care about. And so we were also talking about this like with the spaces model, like it's just as easy as that to really like say like okay, like am I trying to make sure that my customers are successful, like am I just trying to like help them answer their questions, like what are these things that you're trying to do and trying to achieve within the community, and then figuring out what are all those goals that then tie back into the objectives you have overarching from leadership. I think that that's kind of like, again, the most important piece in any kind of like conversations or any, kind of strategy that you're building for your own community.
What metrics are overvalued and what metrics still deserve more attention?
Yeah, so kind of what I was talking about earlier. I think all of those traditional activity metrics, with the rise of AI too and like search and LLMs, we're seeing traffic go down. The number of people that are actually looking at your community or on your page, right? That's not necessarily going to be as effective now that they can just get their answer from Google or from AI. So I really do think that again, anything that's pointing to revenue in any which way. So again, like I think NPS, there's so many different metrics, that you can really be focused on. But things that again are pointing directly back to like how the community is actually approving impact. But it's going to depend, right? It's really going to depend on your business, the department that you're under, right? So if you're sitting under marketing, which most people are, you're going to have very different metrics, right? Than somebody that's sitting under success, because maybe that'll be more like retention related. So yeah, it really depends.
By the way, it was very interesting insight that I had from Joshua Zerko, who told that it's basically the big mistake when community sits under one department and this department thinks that it
Mm,
owns community, because usually community
yeah,
it's like the horizontal organization. It's not like vertical one that it's only for marketing or only for customer success or only for product. It's like everywhere, but sometimes
it is.
like
Yeah,
it's got blocked. It's got blocked by just one team, and it cannot do anything for anyone else. Which, like, I believe that in best companies, it thrives everywhere. And of course, you cannot have like 10 business goals. You have to have like one,
yeah,
two, up to three. But then you can still include other teams into the conversation and do it together, because at the end of the day, like, business is not different teams. It's like all the teams working together, and community kind of like a glue that helping them to actually work with
yeah.
each other. So it's also very, very interesting. And I also was a little bit surprised, and that's also what you shared with me before about this career retention numbers. So it was actually a
Hmm.
little bit weird to see that people are more happy, and then they think that they will stay longer in this industry. Because from what I
Yeah.
see and from I hear when I'm talking to people, they say, "Oh, I'm searching for my job, blah blah blah, and it's so hard." So what do you see from the report?
Yeah, it's very true. This was actually one of my favorite stats from the entire report because, again, it kind of ties back into the optimism that people are having within the industry. So, yeah, 65.8% of community professionals said that they want to stay in this profession. And the exit intent is the lowest it's been over the past 3 years, if we look back at the data all the way to 2024. So, it is quite crazy. And I agree, there are a lot of hardships. There are a lot of people that have been laid off or are searching for their next role, but that doesn't mean that they want to go into anything else. They definitely want to stay in the community industry. And again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where, people really do love the work. They love what they're doing. They love helping other people. I think a huge part of community is really serving others and ensuring that, they're being successful in whatever way, shape, or form they need to be. And so, yeah, I definitely thought it was probably the most encouraging stat that we could have seen. And yeah, people are very satisfied, even though there are all these, hardships, right? With like proving ROI, which is just constant struggle for everyone. Even with budgets like both going up and going down for very different reasons. We did actually have like higher growth like across like all of the teams, but still, teams are mostly small, mostly having to do it all, right? So there are all of these challenges, but it's just really great to see that even through it all, community professionals really want to kind of push through and they want to stay. They want to be in the industry because, again, I think that mission is always like the strongest. If you have that guiding light and that purpose, it's going to make things, yeah, just much more viable and much more enjoyable, even though you are facing these hardships.
I really like this part in the report. Community Plus is the new default. So tell me more about
Yep.
this.
Yeah, so the days of the pure community professional are kind of gone. I can definitely attest to this as leading CMX. I kind of put on a different hat every single day, if not multiple times a day. Obviously, yeah, so you can be community, but also marketing. You can also be, well, I think a lot of community professionals focus on marketing, especially if you're running events and doing promotion. That's just kind of a natural part of the job and why I think so many community professionals do sit under marketing. But you also can be having an influence on product, right? So maybe you're, facilitating those engagement loops and you're really helping product get direct feedback from your community members so that they can then come out with a new feature or continue to improve the product to ensure that it's working well for them, right? So, yeah, I definitely think that this is kind of the future of community that and again, kind of to your point, we really do amplify all these different teams within a business. So whether, we do sit under one department, I still think that we do need to have those, again, like internal champions or advocates or whatever you want to say within each team, because we are influencing so much of what they're doing and helping them be even better in what they're doing. So I really do think that, yeah, this is kind of like the new normal. And I think a lot of community professionals relate to that. But I think it just makes us stronger if we fully understand what other teams want and need and kind of have that idea. Again, it kind of helps us build our confidence, right, in that business acumen side. And it also just makes the role, again, so much more enjoyable when you do have those relationships. And again, these people that are on your side because they understand how community is really amplifying and impacting their work.
Yeah, that's exactly what I always hear from the community ROI conversations, that people usually say that community as a standalone team, yes, it's amazing, and it still amplifies all other teams. So
Yep.
standalone is kind of like, yeah, okay, good to have, but it's always good when community plus marketing, product, customer success. My favorite community plus sales. I'm kind of like comparing incomparable because usually people like trying to protect community from sales, and I'm like, actually, sales is also very good community building because to sell a product, you need to really understand people, their needs.
Yep.
I mean, like when you're doing a good sales, but when you're doing a shitty sales, yeah, it's totally opposite. And it's something that also Edjan Sante and Pauline Sumovsky talked about. Just two people talked about community plus sales, which is also interesting. And I really, really love this kind of like switch. But I also see a lot of people are connecting community with go to market. Hey, we will
Mm,
help you like talk to customers and get feedback and then go out there.
yeah.
And that's, by the way, that's what a lot of AI tools are doing. For example, I heard the story of Lovable who got their funding because with the help of the community. So they grow
Yeah.
basically by once again, you have to start with a good product. If you have shitty products,
Hmm.
community will not help you. It will help you to like bury your product. But when you have a good
Yes.
product, of course, it will amplify. And yeah, it's very interesting. And by the way, do you think that like it's more of a personal question? So community teams in many companies are still like one person team. Do you think
Yeah.
communities will still be small teams because of this AI stuff?
It's a really good question. I am a team largely of one. Yes, I do have some folks that do help me. We have a part-time community manager for him that handles and oversees much of CMX Connect. But yeah, again, very small team. Yeah, I can see it going multiple different ways. I think it also depends on the size of your organization and your goals, but I definitely think that there's no bad way that it could really go, right? Because even if you don't have more team members, you still can, again, use AI, build different AI agents, kind of have that background mechanism that's constantly running to help you do kind of all of like these little other things that maybe weren't your favorite. I still think that, there is a lot of value in, having like a larger team and being able to collaborate with others. So I don't want to say that this is definitely going to be the future of community. Um, but yeah, again, just to kind of like speak to the skeptics a little bit, AI can free up a lot of your time to, again, focus on those other really important elements with that human to human connection. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ways that it could go, and I'm excited to see where it is. But yeah, I mean, I'm already on a small team, but it is helping me tremendously get a lot more done. Just having that kind of like as your teammate, kind of like what you said before, to really help you get a lot more done than you probably could have previously.
I feel like we were talking a little bit about community professional career paths. How does it look like? Because like community plus something, so you are becoming
Yeah.
like this bigger expert, which also helps to a little bit. I feel like when you are talking to leadership, because they know marketing, they know customer success, they know product. They don't always know community, but when you like add plus part, yeah, it's a little easier to talk to, and it's also a little easier to share community story when you connect different teams metrics, because when you are inside their mind, because leadership knows already those metrics, and when you show how community amplifies those metrics, it's also once again a little bit easier to talk about. And from your experience, from the report that you are having right now, like what skills will become most valuable for community leaders in the upcoming few years?
Yeah, I think it's twofold, right? So what I was saying before, like these like softer skills, right? That I think people have traditionally in the past, right? Like even just like 5, 10 years ago, it wasn't, like again, it's harder to put on your resume. People didn't really consider that as, great as like, oh, what tools do you know how to use? Like what has been like the main impact that you've had in the company? Like tell us the data. I think that's still very important. But as AI becomes more and more prevalent, having that, emotional intelligence, that empathy, kind of all these soft skills, right, that we kind of wrote off not even that long ago are going to become even more important. But on top of that, I think you also do need to become an AI wizard, right? I think in order to kind of keep up with where we're going, it's really important to be able to understand how to use it effectively, what tools make the most sense for your workflow. But again, not getting so bogged down in AI and completely just ignoring, right, all the other really important aspects that we should still be doing. I don't think you should just automate your entire job and just be like, okay, I'm just going to take off the rest of the week. Everything is just running on its own. I definitely don't think that that's how it should be. Um, and yeah, I think it's really going to be finding that balance between both and understanding, yeah, where you should be most focused and more prioritizing, which again, in my opinion, is going to be actually facilitating the conversations, getting on calls with your members, asking them what they care about, what they want to see, how you can continue to help them. And still facilitating those events, right? I know this is something we haven't like really touched on, but in-person attendance is continuously going up. And I think, again, this is another really encouraging stat from the report because it's showing that people really care and want to have that face-to-face connection, right? I don't think it's completely going to get rid of virtual. I think virtual is really, really important to reach more people. And in-person events probably will be a little bit more intimate, right? You're not going to probably have like tons of people coming unless it's like a huge conference. But I think it is really important because that's where the biggest connection happens. And I can attest to that with CMX Summit. It was the first time I got to meet so many people in person. I'd see their names pop up in Slack, but there's nothing like being there in person and having that conversation. And yeah, it's just so much easier to connect on a human to human level versus kind of having that screen. It always just kind of like blocks you off from really being able to get to the best stuff of what in person brings. Um, so I know that that kind of went off on a little bit of like a tangent. Um, but yeah, I truly feel like that's going to be where we continue to go because people are craving that. I work remotely. I know a lot of people in tech do as well, especially community people. We can kind of do our work from anywhere. And so I think it's even more important to get in person and we need to keep flexing those skills, right? And those muscles of what makes us such great community people, which is kind of that, again, like I was saying, that emotional intelligence, that relationship building, all of those elements that make us really authentic.
Yeah.
And
When
yeah,
I see those photos on LinkedIn of people coming to CMX Summit or like listen recent led by community event, I'm like, oh my God, I have such a huge feeling of missing out. And it's not a fear of, but specifically a feeling because I see all those photos. I'm like,
yeah,
oh my God, those people are meeting in real lives there. And also to your point, when you've told that you see people on Slack and then you see in person, that's something that we recently talked with Seth Ressler about, that the nature of events are kind of changing because before,
yeah,
like before COVID, it was that people went to event and then they continue like conversation online. And after COVID, because of all these online events and stuff, people got to know each other online first. But then
yeah.
that's why they go to events because, as you said, they want to
Mm,
meet those people in real life. And I feel like it's very important thing that actually worked very different back then. And to a point that I hope that we are coming to pre-COVID times with in person, maybe even
yeah,
overcoming. And also to a point, it feels like this AI fatigue is also what helping because even though AI
yeah,
can superpower you and give you some extra time and you are becoming faster, but
yep,
still you need more human conversations. It's totally different. Sometimes you just need to slow down and just think with the speed of human thoughts, not with the speed of AI that can like to take all the data from 300 people and put it like
yep,
right away to you, but actually to, as you said, train your muscle and talk to real humans.
yeah.
And
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, yeah, I was just going to quickly say, I think there is a lot of pressure around using AI right now. I'm not saying that that's why most people are using it, but I felt it, right? Like I'm like, oh, I need to try out the next best tool, or I need to understand how to use every single one and how it's going, because so many people are talking about it and it is kind of overwhelming. So I just do want to say that I really hope that you take it slow. Definitely take some courses if that's like what makes you feel best. I do honestly, the reason why I've like learned AI so well is because I just have gotten into it and just start using it. And I think that's like, the most beneficial, right? When it connects back to like what you're actually working on. But yeah, I just want to say that, I totally understand if people do feel that way. And I think that there's no reason to have to force yourself to use it. Please only use it when it actually makes sense for you and for your workflow and what you're trying to do.
I totally have this feeling, even though that I'm a hard ChatGPT user, I have this
Mm,
fear of missing out that my folks that I'm working with, that they are continuously using Claude and Claude Code. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm missing it. I need to try Claude Code. And then like, I'm still sticking to
yeah.
ChatGPT because that's exactly what I need. And it helps me to deal with the tasks that I have. So yeah, totally agree. And I have so many more questions and I wish to have the sky is the limit, but time is the limit. So the final question. What is one action that every community professional should take after reading the CMX industry report?
Yeah. I would say, again, kind of encapsulating our entire conversation. Um, Kind of again going back to the ROI piece, because again, that's what your entire podcast is all about. Super important to have the data. So for all of you that haven't connected your data to your CRM, I think that's the ultimate first step. Work with internal teams, try to make it happen. Explain why it's super important. I'm like 100% sure leadership will be on your side if this is something that you haven't done, because it is so important to be equipped and to be able to feel confident in yourself. That's the thing that kind of was hardest to see, is that people aren't feeling as confident in being able to prove their impact. And this is something that I think everyone has the capability to do. If you don't have a CRM at your company, try to figure out another way. Use AI to build out kind of a platform, or ask somebody for help that is an AI guru. I'm sure you're going to be able to do it. And then from there, really ensure and understand, go talk to the different teams in your company, talk to leadership, really try to understand like what matters to them, what matters to the business, and then reverse engineer from that and ensure that your goals and your objectives are lining up with exactly what they care about, because it's just going to make your job so much easier and so much more enjoyable. I know that we all really love this work. I definitely do. And, there's so many great aspects to it, but I feel like this is always the biggest pain point for most community professionals. And I know it might seem scary. It might be out of your comfort zone. It might be something that you just don't have the tools to do yourself or that you still need to learn. But I really, really implore you to just do it. Just take action, because it's going to be so worth it, for you, for your company, for all of your community members. It's all really interconnected. So that would kind of be my biggest takeaway. And also just know that so many people want to stay in community, and we are some of the best people. I know, I'm kind of biased, but lean on other people. This is like a shameless plug. Please join the CMX community if you're not part of it. So many people are dealing with these same struggles, and you can learn from so many others that are finding success by just asking these questions, getting on coffee chats like what Yuri and I are doing right now. I think that's one of the most important things that you can do externally to kind of build yourself up in your profession. I think we serve so many people every single day that we really need to pour back into ourselves and continue to grow as community professionals. So please join CMX. We have lots of great events, lots of great resources like the Community Industry Report that can really help you in your career. And of course, always listen to anything that Yuri puts out. He has incredible people on the podcast. But yeah, that would be my biggest takeaway. And I really, really appreciate being here. This has been super fun.
Actually, community CMX community was the first place that I entered the international community world through, and like I
Oh,
made
wow.
one of the best friends through the CMX community. So even though I'm personally not showing up there too much, I just don't have time for that. But when
Yeah.
I started, when I was gathering all this information, when I felt this feeling that I need someone to talk to, it was like my main go-to place, and it helped me so much in my like initial years in this in international industry, and like it's still deep in my heart. So CMX, one love, go join it. See you there. And also, to keep the conversation going, name two people I should reach out to talk about community ROI.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I already mentioned him earlier, Demario Bell. He has the best like mindset and kind of framework that you can implement. Really quickly, he mentioned this equation, which I thought was super interesting. Your CRM plus any type of BI tool, business intelligence tool, plus Tableau or something similar equals return on investment. I thought that was a really interesting way to break it down. He definitely needs to be on the podcast. Demario, if you're listening, please make time to do this. And then you've already talked to Josh, because I would say I love his philosophy on the whole integration, right? And ensuring that community is kind of, again, a part of all these different ecosystems within a company. Um, I would also say, well, Suzanne Shaw is also really great. She was also one of our speakers at Summit. She has really, really great insights into ROI. She also comes from a go to market and sales background. So, again, really interesting how that translates over. She will be moving out of community, but I still think it would be worth a conversation because she just has a lot of great insights. And I've learned so much from her as well. So, I would say all of those people.
I will just take your words as quotes and just send to them, and that's it. And then
You
invite them
should.
to have this
You
conversation.
definitely should.
And Kat, thank you so much, first of all, for this conversation. I'm super happy that we finally met, kind of in person, still online, but who
Yeah,
knows,
still
one
online.
day.
Hopefully, eventually, you should
Yeah,
come to CMX Summit next year so we can meet in person.
hope so, hope so. And
Putting it out
also,
in the universe.
thank you so much for putting all the passion and all the interest in the community work and all the belief into this CMX report. I already know that it's amazing, and I feel like it's a little bit different from previous reports. So I can definitely feel a little bit of you there. So thank you very much for what you are doing, and of course for this conversation.
Appreciate it so much, Yuri. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, see you in the community world. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions about how the community can help you reach and overcome your business goals faster, let's connect on LinkedIn and talk about it. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.